everything has been, so many things have needed to be done, but because I haven't been able to do anything for a month and a half, and then so I got a visit at the end of June by the very person that I was building one of these for, and they had been to the Hill Air Force Base Air Show in Utah, visiting. They were using that as an excuse to visit one of their friends who had joined the Air Force and got stationed there. And as a aircraft bomber upper, someone who puts the weapons on the plane, and then, but the person getting this, they used to be really interested in aircraft, especially World War II aircraft. Ever since I took them to an air show in the late 90s that was put on by the Confederate. Oh, yes, that was the name back then. Confederate Air Force at the Pocatello Regional Airport. And one of the aircraft they had was a P-51 Mustang. Well, so they go to the Hill Air Force Base Air Show at the end of June, and the Air Force has these, they call them heritage aircraft, and they're old aircraft that they keep flying and they take to air shows, and one of them was a P-51 Mustang. Well, suddenly this person remembered that they liked World War II aircraft. And they had forgotten this because they had, starting in junior high when their mother died, they had just a decade and a half long of series of unfortunate events that apparently caused them to forget that they like aircraft, especially World War II aircraft. So they, seeing the P-51 Mustang at the Hill Air Force Base show, it triggered they told me they just got flooded with memories of going to air shows when they were a kid and how they wanted to be a pilot and all this other stuff. So, and they had to stop by on their way back to Boise from the air show, and to tell me, because I was the one who started taking them to air shows when they were a kid. Anyway, I didn't tell them I was making this for them. So it's kind of interesting that suddenly they remember. Well, now they don't know what to do with. They got one semester to go before they graduate university, and now they have a new option because they're thinking about joining the Air Force. Anyway, boy, I tried to remind them that, many years ago I tried to, hey, you liked aircraft, but no, they must have, they had so many bad things happen. They must have blocked out a lot of, anyway, so I was like, man, I gotta get better and get back to this. There was oh yeah, and then after they left, they were only here for a couple hours. So like the next day, I got hit with this upper respiratory thing. I don't know, stereotypical fever, muscle aches, can't hardly breathe, and congestion and whatever. And nobody I know is sick. I'm the only one that's sick. So I'm like, is it West Nile virus? Because I got bit by a bunch of mosquitoes. So, and the Idaho mosquitoes are full of West Nile virus. So maybe that was it. Trying to get back into building this. So maybe I'll show you the film I found of my, is it great uncle? My grandfather's brother was a pilot in the U.S. Army Air Force's Hellhawks. And that's not to be confused with the U.S. Marine Corps Hellhawks. Because, yeah, the Marine Corps has Hellhawks, and the U.S. Army Air Force had Hellhawks. Anyway, so I found this film of the Hellhawks, color film. So another kind of reminder to, hey, come on, build this P-47. And anyway, maybe I'll show you, see if I can show it to you. Okay, so that the guy on the right is my grandfather, O.G. Hutchins, who was a tank commander, U.S. Marine Corps Sherman tank commander in World War II, and just the tail end of Korea. And the guy on the left is his brother, Lloyd Hutchins, who flew P-47s with the U.S. Army Air Force Hellhawks. This is a photo of him in his bubble top. He had Razorback and bubble top Thunderbolts, and they were called Mississippi Rebel. Now notice this one. There's 3 kill marks under the cockpit, but the books I've read said he was only credited with 2. Interesting. So this is a silent film I found, and it was labeled as P-47s in Germany, but the date of the film was January 5th, 1945, which, anyway, it was labeled January 5th, 1945, which doesn't jive with the unit's supposed location. The unit's supposed location for January of 1945 was in Belgium. And I could tell by the film's not labeled what unit. It's just labeled P-47s in Germany, and then it's also it says German POWs. So that's all it's, Other than that, there's almost no information on the film. And anyway, I could tell by the markings on the planes, the nose art, the unit markings. These are all these are all Hellhawk aircraft. Yeah, so I watched the whole thing, and none of the planes belonged to my great uncle. But it's interesting. Of course, it's silent. There's no. They didn't record audio at the same time back then. So, my great uncle got into trouble for flying. Apparently, somebody dared him to take his plane, or he dared the rest of his guys, to follow him under the Eiffel Tower, which was a big no-no. So, according to the story in one of the books I have, they made one pass under the Eiffel Tower, and then they were going to do it again. And somebody came over the radio and said, "Hey, there's a bunch of generals down here that want to see you do that again." So they quickly decided to fly back to base. Because it was against French law, and it was a violation of U.S. Army policy. So but their job mainly was ground attack. They did have some early in the D-Day invasion, they escorted bombers. But after that, once D-Day was over with and the invasion of Europe was underway, they reverted back strictly to ground attack. And spent a lot of time just shooting up anything that moved on the ground. Well, they claim they didn't shoot up anything that moved, but so I need to get back to building on those kits. Yep. And this sequence coming up is interesting. Oh my gosh, I thought they were on our side. Look at that. Look at that flag. Oh my gosh. The Wokies are going to get me. Yeah. They were using a captured German flag as the launching flag. But I could see how people are like, what the heck? I'm going to be kicked off at BlueTube because of this. Never mind the historical context of what we're seeing here. But anyway. So this is basically the end of the film of the Hellhawks, U.S. Army Air Force Hellhawks. Probably in Belgium, even though the film says Germany.